Those who break the sinister rules of our haunted Maine town discover terrifying secrets at night. The city of Eastbrook, Maine hadn't seen a newcomer in years, and those who dared cross its threshold often did so with a shiver down their spine, warned by stories of the witch's curse. The wind howled, and shadows danced in ominous patterns, carrying whispered warnings that dared anyone to stay out past dusk. The Croft family, however, had ignored the signs, blinded by their hope for a fresh start. Jenna and Mark had finally purchased a charming Victorian house, its peeling paint and crooked eaves a stark contrast to the pristine dreams they'd painted in their minds. Soon, they would learn that beauty often hides the darkest horrors. On their first evening, the Crofts gathered for dinner, laughter echoing in the Victorian's high ceilings, the warmth of family filling the cold air. But as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, the atmosphere thickened with an unsettling silence. Then came a gentle yet insistent tapping at the kitchen window, drawing their gaze towards Mr. Hargrove's property. His garden was overrun with impossibly lifelike dolls, hung from twisted branches, and just as they seemed to stare back, chilling every fiber of Jenna's being. "Maybe we should visit Mr. Hargrove tomorrow," she suggested, but a cold shiver raced down her spine as Mark's silence hung heavy with doubt. As night fell, an oppressive tension settled around them, the darkness creeping in like a predatory beast. Whispers echoed through the chilly air, reminders of the town's many taboos. Nothing was sacred here after dark. Ethan and Lily exchanged fearful glances, sensing the shift, their adventurous spirits faltering. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, almost alive with the dread of countless local legends. "Did you hear that?" Ethan whispered, barely audible over the chirping crickets. A shadow slipped between the trees outside, too swift, too dark. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The house felt alive, breathing its secrets through creaking floors and whispering walls. That night, Lily had left for a friend's house, promising to return soon. Hours passed, and when she didn't come back, panic ripped through the Crofts like sharp glass. The town had come alive with rumors, each story more chilling than the last. People spoke of friends suddenly vanished and of dolls that came to life. What had seemed like quaint folklore now clawed at their sanity. That as night wrapped Eastbrook in its suffocating shroud, the family rushed through the unwelcoming streets, fueled by desperation. The hollow feeling grew in Jenna's chest, a foreboding sensation telling her they weren't safe. Then, from the darkness emerged familiar sounds, the haunting echoes of Lily's laughter twisted into something unrecognizable. The Crofts dared to step into Mr. Hargrove's garden, dread curling in their stomachs, each doll's face reflecting her absence or worse. A gust of wind sent the dolls swinging, their lifeless eyes almost pleading as they neared the heart of the chilling mystery. Trapped in a town ruled by sinister traditions, the question pulsed through the depths of their minds. Could they break the very rules meant to keep them safe, or had they sealed their own fate? The air was thick with tension as Jenna stepped further into the cursed garden, her heart racing like a trapped animal. This was a place of nightmares, where the laughter of a little girl was twisted into a ghostly wail, carried by the wind. Ethan clung to her side, his eyes wide, flickering between the dolls and the shadows that swirled around them. No longer simply figments of urban legends, they felt like undeniable threats, waiting for a moment of weakness to pounce. "Lily," Jenna called out, her voice breaking into the night. Instantly, the air felt colder, the dolls swaying in response. Their unblinking eyes seemed to reflect an ancient knowledge, speaking of secrets best left buried. "Where are you?" Panic tightened its grip around her throat, squeezing tightly, as if attempting to choke any hope left within her. Mark stepped closer to her. "Maybe we should go back," he nervously suggested, glancing over his shoulder, already sensing the creeping dread wrapping around them. "It's not safe here." But Jenna couldn't leave, not without Lily. For all the fear in her heart, a fierce determination to find her daughter burned brighter. With decision in her eyes, she pressed forward, exploring the darkness. The dolls loomed over them like sentinels. Their limbs were stiff and unnatural, yet they loomed closer, whispering secrets only they could hear. "Do you think Mr. Hargrove took her?" Ethan whispered, dread tangible in his tone. "I heard he is strange." Mark shook his head, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. He'd grown up with these tales, stories of mischief and betrayal, but they were just that, stories. Now, they were alive, and they felt real. Suddenly, from a cluster of grotesque porcelain faces, the laughter returned, echoing through the stillness. This time, it was louder and rang with an eerie joy, chilled Jenna to the bone. "We need to find her," she shouted, desperation fueling her voice. Before they could react, a doll's arm snapped down, pointing toward the depths of the garden where shadows swirled thicker. Heart racing, Jenna ventured toward it. The closer they got, the more the oppressive silence clawed at them. It felt as if the world held its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen as they pressed on. A chilling realization dawned. Each step drew them deeper into the heart of the sinister garden, where the laughter weaved into a hideous chorus. Suddenly, one of the dolls fell from its branch, landing with a dull thud at Jenna's feet. She stumbled back, the porcelain face turning to her with a cruel grin. "What the hell is happening?" Ethan shouted, spiraling into panic. Mark grabbed Jenna's arm, trying to pull her back, but she knelt to examine the fallen doll. It was different from the others, its eyes shimmering with an unnatural glow. Where they had once been cold and lifeless, this one seemed alive. The inscription on its base read, "All who seek shall find, but only in darkness." A voice whispered from behind, "You shouldn't have come here." Jenna turned in terror, her pulse racing. The shadows coalesced, taking form amidst the dolls. Strikingly familiar, a figure emerged from their depths, a glimpse of something that looked like Lily, though twisted and changed, her eyes deep voids of despair. "Mommy!" Help! The words pulled at Jenna's heartstrings, yet dread twisted in her stomach. This was no longer a search for her daughter. It was a confrontation with darkness. Just as she was about to reach out, the garden exploded with shrieks. The shadows surged. The dolls began to snap to life, tumbling down as they converged upon them. The laughter rose to a maddening pitch, echoing in the air like a warning bell. As Mark and Ethan screamed, Jenna realized with horror that the only rule she'd broken was the most perilous of all. Never trust the smiles cloaked in shadows. She was about to lose everything. But before the nightmare enveloped her, a blinding flash illuminated the garden, and with it, a truth that ignited her very soul. What kind of horrors awaited in the next revelation? All was about to unfold in a way that would shake the very foundations of their existence. The blinding light swallowed them whole, a jolt that snapped Jenna's senses back to life. For a heartbeat, the chaos faded. The dolls froze, their twisted features caught in an eerie tableau, as if time itself dared not move. Silence enveloped the garden, thick and suffocating, before the stillness shattered under a cacophony of laughter that echoed darker than before. What had happened? Jenna's heart pounded in her chest like a war drum. She blinked, and before her stood the figure again. Lily, or what remained of her. A shadowy echo. Her presence felt wrong, like a memory tainted with decay. Around her, the other dolls stood motionless, their eyes simmering with malice, waiting for the horror to resume. "Mommy!" the voice came, a soft, pleading whisper laced with something hideous. It didn't belong to her daughter. It was a siren's song luring her to the depths of despair. "Help me!" "No!" Jenna screamed, squeezing her eyes shut against the horror. "You're not Lily." Struggling against the pull of that insistent voice, Jenna fumbled for her phone, her hands trembling. She needed light. She needed something to pierce this dreadful darkness. As she turned on the flashlight, the beam flickered uncertainly before illuminating her surroundings. "Mark! Ethan!" she cried, desperate for reassurance. She turned, scanning the garden. The boys were still by her side, but their expressions reflected a mix of terror and disbelief, like they were caught in a nightmare they couldn't wake from. "Is it really her?" Mark whispered, dread choking his words. Before Jenna could respond, shadows shifted again. The dolls, still clutching remnants of their innocence, now shifted purpose. They creaked back to life, moving with unnatural speed. A few toppled to the ground, shattering into porcelain dust, while others reached toward them, hands outstretched and beckoning in a grotesque mimicking of a childish game. Ethan took a shaky step backward, his eyes wide. "We can't let them touch us." Jenna nodded, backing away instinctively, yet her eyes were still glued to the horrifying vision of what had become of Lily. The girl's face was both familiar and grotesque, innocence replaced by darkness. A sharp cry pierced the air. "You left me! Help me! I'm trapped!" "You're not trapped, you're not my daughter," Jenna shouted, tears streaming down her face. The familiar warmth of her child felt like a distant memory now, replaced by dread and sorrow. Suddenly, the garden erupted with movement. The shadows surged forward, churning like a tide, threatening to swallow them whole. Jenna's breath quickened, her instincts screaming to flee. But where? There was nowhere to run. The path behind them was choked with confusion, and the ghostly laughter surged behind her with a vengeance. "Hold on to me. We have to stick together," Mark shouted, reaching for Ethan and Jenna. As they grabbed hands in a tight circle, more dolls turned their heads towards them. Their glassy eyes bore through them, peering into their souls, and something deep within Jenna awoke a primal instinct to fight back. "Listen to me," she shouted, her voice rising above the discord. "You want her. You want Lily. Take me instead." The laughter ceased unexpectedly, replaced by something truly sinister. A low, guttural growl emanated from the depths of the garden. The dolls halted, their focus shifting. They seemed to consider Jenna's words, shadows flickering as if contemplating a terrible price. "Mommy!" The figure cried out once more, desperation in its voice. Jenna hesitated, torn between her love for her daughter and the horror crowding around her. Even then, something felt off, a truth bending under the weight of darkness. Just when Jenna thought she'd reached a breaking point, another blinding flash erupted, illuminating everything in sight with a stark, white light this time. It didn't stop, but as thoughts jumbled in her mind, a new voice, deep and resonant, echoed across the garden, curdling her blood. "The ties that bind can also sever. What will you choose?" And in that electric moment they were torn between light and shadow, each pulse of the garden revealing a deeper terror lurking in the unseen. Would the answer bring her daughter back? Or would it shatter everything once and for all? The strobe of light persisted, casting frantic shadows across the garden. The dolls froze again, their malice painted stark against the brilliance that felt both like salvation and a looming threat. Jenna's heart raced, rhythm matching the pulsing tension in the air. She squeezed the boy's hands tighter, desperate to keep her family anchored in this chaos. "Mommy!" The figure wailed again, the voice now laced with deeper fury. The sound ripped at Jenna's heartstrings, and for a breath, she felt the tingle of hope. Maybe it was still Lily, caught in some dark grip. But that hope evaporated as the importance of what was unfolding thundered back into focus. One flickering light couldn't save them, it could only blind them to the real danger brewing at the edges of perception. "Run!" she screamed, instincts flaring, but the shadows from the dolls surged, enveloping them like fetid smoke. The ground churned beneath their feet, twisting and writhing as if alive, blurring the path to safety. Ethan's wide eyes, brimming with terror, met hers. "We can't!" he cried. "They're too fast." Then Jared's voice cut through the hysteria. "What if we used the light? It stopped them before." Without thinking, Jenna lifted her phone as high as she could, sweeping the narrow beam across the lawn. A band of shadow dolls stumbled back, their faces another glimpse into their shattered innocence. But her focus remained on the chilling figure of Lily, frozen mid-sob yet evolving with every flicker of the light. "I am here, Mommy. Just help me. Please." It was almost a plea, sweet and sorrowful. And yet, Jenna felt the chilling grasp of something else clawing at her thoughts' doubt. The laughter surged again, the haunting sound rising and falling like a tide of madness. "You can set her free," a voice hissed from one of the dolls, its porcelain face contorting almost into a mask of temptation. "Just give us what we want, all in exchange for her soul." "What do you mean?" Jenna gasped, fear causing her voice to crack. "What do you want?" "Your love, your fear, your sacrifice," the words twisted, too silky and layered with venom. They soaked into Jenna like oil, dulling her senses and intoxicating her with horror. "Stop it," Mark shouted, his grip tightening around Jenna's hand. "We're not doing anything for you. Leave us alone." More dolls staggered forward, eyes glistening with a predatory gleam. Each step they took echoed with a thud, a heartless rhythm that coincided with Jenna's own pulse driving panic deeper into her chest. Then, out of the clamor, a chilling notion gripped her. She flashed back to the moment before everything spiraled out of control. The ties that bind, "What will you choose?" echoed in the depths of her mind. Maybe, Jenna whispered, recognizing her only chance. Maybe it's about choosing the bond we have with each other. "Mommy!" Lily's figure shrieked again, discord mingled with desperation. "Don't leave me. They'll take me forever." As Jenna drew in a breath, resolute against the terror wrapping around them, she suddenly understood. The solution wasn't to sacrifice herself. It was to strengthen their bond, each heartbeat intertwined, each scream silenced by unity. In this moment, she clenched her eyes shut and murmured for the boys to follow her lead. Holding on tight, Jenna shouted over the cacophony, "We are stronger than your darkness. We choose love." The dolls screeched, aggression morphing into shrill cries of agony. The light flickered dangerously, but it was enough to push forward, to face down the swarm. They sprinted toward the garden's edge, where chaos swirled, fueling their resolve, urging them into an unknown escape. But Lily's voice pierced through the wind. "You will soon regret your choice. There is always a price." As Jenna leaped onto the overgrown path, an icy grip reached for her from behind, snagging at her ankle. She stumbled but didn't fall. Instead, she propelled herself forward, feeling the boys yank against her pull, each breath drawing them deeper into the night's embrace. The air thickened around them, heavy with anticipation and shadows. But the direction was lost, the path ahead cloaked in obscurity. In that moment, Jenna fought against the instincts that begged her to look back, for she feared what they might take if they glimpsed the truth. But behind her, the doll's laughter morphed again into something much darker and more menacing, a sound so layered with doom that it chilled her to the bone. Behind them, life continued to pulse in the strange garden, promising horrors yet to be seen. What would they awaken, and what awaited them in the dark recesses beyond their frantic escape? They barreled down the narrow, twisting path, breathless and disoriented, as the darkness closed in around them. Every flicker of the failing light felt like an omen, dim and hovering just out of reach, an echo of the chaos they fled. The forest loomed like a predator, its branches curling like skeletal fingers, ready to entrap them. "Mommy, I can't see." Ethan's voice trembled, reverberating back to her through the air thick with despair. "Stay close. Just hold on," Jenna called out, panic drenching her words. Each step they took felt heavy, as if the ground beneath resisted their flight. The weight of something ancient pressed down upon them, a suffocating force that preyed on the seams of their sanity. Jenna stole a glance back, against her better judgment. The garden pulsed with life, but it was the dolls she feared, their silent, hollow faces etching themselves into her mind like a brand. They stood still again, a phalanx of wraiths, their eyes glinting with a terrifying luminosity that drilled into her thoughts. No longer shrieking, no longer laughing, only waiting. What did they mean? She thought, her mind racing. What price did they want? The pounding of her heart drowned out everything else. But fear wasn't all that surged in her veins. A flicker of anger ignited, anger at herself for doubt, for vulnerability. She couldn't let those wretched things win. "Mommy," Jared whined, straining against the forest's gloom, the wayward branches scratching at them like angry ghosts. I don't like this." "I know, sweetie." Just keep running. Each word felt like a promise she had to keep, not just for them, but for Lily too. They needed to escape the garden, and whatever it held, before it pulled them under. Then, an eerie rustle echoed around them, coming from somewhere deep in the woods. Jenna stilled, the unmistakable sound of something shifting in the underbrush. This was no innocent beast. It held intent, a shadow lurking just beneath the surface of awareness. "Did you hear that?" Mark whispered, his voice taut with tension. The hairs on Jenna's neck stood on end. "Let us go faster," she urged, but deep inside, apprehension coiled tight around her heart. What if it was too late? What if they didn't escape? The boys stumbled but caught themselves. Jenna maintained a swift pace, squeezing the little hands in hers, desperately pushing through the chaos around them. Each hurried breath was visceral. It filled her lungs with the cold dampness of impending dread. Suddenly, an icy wind surged through the trees, howling with the disembodied laughter of the dolls. Each echo seemed to mock them, a whisper promising horror. Sometimes it seemed to say, "The pursuit is sweeter than the catching." The shadows flickered, grotesque and terrible, spinning around them a cyclone of despair. "Run!" Jenna shouted, edging them forward, her resolve hardening. "We can't stop, no matter what." But the path ahead disappeared, swallowed by shadows that pressed close as if seeking to claim them. She pushed against the fear tugging at her, willing her legs to match the rhythm of her racing heart. And just when they thought they couldn't run anymore, Jenna saw a flickering light ahead. A lantern, bobbing like a lifeline in the surrounding darkness. But in that moment of hope, a sickening realization gripped her. What if it wasn't salvation, but another trap? "Go!" she yelled, directing the boys toward the light. "Don't stop for anything." As they stumbled forward, the laughter clashed with other sounds, children's voices rising in harmony with the darkness, a sing-song echo that twisted like a knife in her gut, summoning visions of innocence lost. "No, this can't be happening," she gasped, but still, they tore through the underbrush, branches clawing at their clothes, leaving new canvas marks of horror over their skin. Just as they emerged into the pale light, a sudden burst of laughter enveloped them. The lantern swung ominously, revealing not salvation, but another twisted figure, a shadow mannequin, chillingly familiar. For there, trapped in the glow, stood not Lily, but something far worse. A sentinel weeping, its porcelain face dimmed with sorrow, another reflection of dread from the garden. In that moment, the truth crashed down like an avalanche over her. No matter where they ran, the darkness would always follow. Had they truly escaped, or was this the beginning of a darker game? Jenna's heart hammered in her chest as she stepped back, realizing too late that the rules of the game had only just begun to unfold. The lantern's glow flickered, casting long, twisted shadows that danced along the ground as Jenna took a step back, heart pounding. The figure before them moved slightly, the weeping mannequin gazing at them with empty, sorrowful eyes. It felt as if the air thickened with despair, wrapping around her like a shroud. "Mommy, it looks scared," Ethan whispered, trembling. His innocent eyes reflected the lantern's light, a stark contrast to the horror they faced. Jenna squeezed his hand tighter, a mix of horror and determination swirling within her. "No, sweetie, it's not scared. It wants something." She breathed shakily, her instincts screaming that they needed to leave, to turn back down the path from which they had come. But the shadows were pressing in, the darkness whispering seduction and fear. Mark shifted nervously beside her. "What is it? What does it want?" His voice cracked, uncertain. Behind them, the laughter echoed again, a cacophony of sweet, poisonous joy that twisted her stomach. Suddenly, the mannequin extended a hand, its movements slow and deliberate, as if inviting them closer. Jenna took a step back. "We have to go," she shouted, panic igniting wild in her chest. Now, yet it felt like glue, the ground beneath them holding them captive as the path behind began to blur, shadows intertwining like twisted vines, threatening to consume them. They were no longer just running from what had chased them. Now they were trapped in this theater of horror, where the light provided no solace. And then, without warning, the air crackled with tension, as though the very forest held its breath. A rustling erupted around them, and from the thicket emerged more figures, doll-like shapes, eerily familiar, clad in tattered clothing. Their eyes shimmered cold and brilliant like stars, but they were devoid of warmth. "Join us," a hushed voice called, layered with echoes. "Join us and play forever." Jenna turned fiercely, shielding her children as the figures advanced. "Stay behind me," she shouted, lungs burning, panic coursing through her veins. The dolls began to sway, their laughter blending with the ghostly call, creating a haunting melody that clawed at her sanity. "Mommy," Jared whimpered, pressing close, and in that moment, she felt the weight of the world, the burden of protecting these innocent children from whatever darkness loomed. "Run," she screamed, dragging them back down the overgrown path. She didn't dare look back, but the soft, wooden footsteps seemed to follow, coiling around her with each frantic step. Every plant, every whisper of wind felt like taunting fingers grasping at her. Desperate and unyielding, the lantern flickered lower, its flame waning, darkness now slipping closer, mingling with the light. Jenna felt her pulse quickening, her legs burning with exhaustion, but she had to keep going, had to find their way back to safety. Suddenly, they burst through the trees, and she stumbled onto a clearing bathed in silvery moonlight. A tarnished old swing set creaked in the night, swaying eerily. Broken glass crunched underfoot, littering the ground. She felt exposed, surrounded by unsettling silence, but there was no turning back. "What is this place?" Mark asked, voice trembling. It's just a clearing," Jenna breathed, trying to regain her composure. But she couldn't shake the feeling. The weight of eyes on her, watching, waiting. Then, from the darkness, a chorus of whispers enveloped them. "You can't leave, you may break our rules," and with that, realization hit like a cold wave. They hadn't just stumbled into darkness, they had crossed a threshold. A boundary of sin and sorrow that once crossed, would bind them forever to the horror lurking just beyond sight. Jenna grabbed the boys, her heart racing. They had to keep moving. But as they turned to flee, the whispers grew louder, a haunting mantra echoing through the trees. How would they escape the sinister web? In the eye of the moonlight, Jenna felt the hunger of shadows creeping closer still, and she knew not all roads would lead back home. What sacrifice awaited them this time? The whispers surged like a tide, pulling Jenna and her boys toward a dark fate. The trees stood sentry, their gnarled branches clawing at her ankles, trying to drag her back to the twisted playthings rising from the underbrush. "They're lost," she muttered under her breath, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Mommy, please, what are they saying?" Jared's voice quivered, barely above a whisper, like the flickering flame of their lantern. "They want to keep us forever." Jenna squeezed his hand, feeling the sweat between their palms. The world had twisted around them. The familiar woods morphed into a nightmare where echoes looped endlessly. They took off again, adrenaline shooting through Jenna's veins. The lantern light struggled valiantly, casting shadows that elongated, reaching for her, as if the darkness itself sought to grasp them in its grasp. Behind them, laughter rang out, sinister and merry. It was a childish sound twisted by something dark, an invitation wrapped in malevolence that made her skin crawl. "Come play with us," the dolls sang, their blank faces now morphing into a chaotic mosaic of horror. Jenna ran faster, urgency coursing through her. She could feel the weight of the night closing in, the trees whispering secrets, branches scraping against her arms like fingers begging her to stay. "We need to find another way out," she gasped, fear twisting her stomach. Ethan stumbled behind them and fell. "Mommy," he cried, his voice cracking. "Get up. We're going now." Jenna pulled him to his feet with a quick jerk, but even as she spoke, regret washed over her. Every fiber of her being screamed to run, but what if stopping meant they'd never leave? A sudden stillness enveloped them, the air thick and heavy. The lantern flickered again, a last desperate attempt to hold back the darkness. Jenna turned to look ahead, hoping to see an escape, but all she saw was an oppressive wall of shadows. They pressed closer, mingling with the chilling laughter. "Mommy, I'm scared," Jared sobbed, his tiny frame trembling against her side. "I know, but we can't stop," she urged, trying to keep her voice steady. Panic clawed at her throat. With nowhere to turn, Jenna caught a glimpse of movement off to her right. It was one of the doll-like figures, twisted and grotesque, creeping toward them with slow, deliberate steps. Its eyes glowed in the dim, flickering light, and the faintest outline of a smile twisted across its face, as if finding joy in their fear. "Stay together," Mark yelled, fear spilling over in his voice, like something primordial awakening. They huddled closer, 3 bodies pressing tightly against each other, a fragile sanctuary amidst the chaos. "Join us," the creature beckoned again, its voice slithering through the air, seductive and taunting. "You don't want to break our rules, do you?" Jenna's heart raced. What rules? What did they mean? And then, as if triggered by her thoughts, one of the trees creaked ominously, its massive trunk splitting open like a mouth. A tunnel gaped wide beneath its roots, a dark invitation. "This way," it seemed to whisper. "No, we keep going forward," Jenna shouted, but the temptation of escape tugged at her mind. What could be lurking in the shadows? What lay beyond? With no time to debate, the shadows thickened. Jenna felt the fiery gaze of the doll figures behind her, urging her toward the maw of darkness. She turned sharply, faster than she thought possible, and took a few hesitant steps toward the opening. Yet she hesitated. "Mommy?" Ethan's small voice broke the tension, a fragile thread amidst the chaos. "Trust me. Trust me," she murmured, steeling her heart and pushing them forward. But deep down, a sinking dread mixed with her instincts. The shadows felt alive. They pulsed and breathed like a living thing. As Jenna nudged the boys towards the dark threshold, she realized they might be stepping into a destiny worse than the fate that chased them. "Will this lead us home?" Jared whispered, fear clinging to his words like adhesive glue. "I don't know, but we have to try." In that instant, Jenna understood. Fear or hope, both paths might lead to unending suffering. And as she led her children into the depths, the laughter climaxed, turning into a cacophony of despair, echoing through the darkness. What had they really chosen by crossing this threshold? The chilling realization hit her hard as they stepped inside, the shadows closing in behind them. Was this the beginning of their freedom or the first step toward their eternal torment? The air inside the tunnel hung thick, suffocating. Jenna strained to find her breath as she pushed forward. The walls, damp and clammy, seemed to pulse against her body, as if the tunnel itself was alive and writhing in hunger. She could feel it in her bones. This was no ordinary passage. The lantern flickered weakly, casting feeble light that turned the slime-coated stones into grotesque shapes. Shadows danced, flickering like dying fireflies, as Jared and Ethan clung to her side. She pressed forward, her heart racing with frantic desperation. "Mommy, I don't like it here," Ethan whispered, his voice breaking, laced with fear that echoed through the claustrophobic space. "We're almost through," she lied, her throat dry, words scraping against the parched surface of her fear. They had to move. The little safety they felt in the woods above ground was now dissolved, remade into a nightmare. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the tunnel, a soft, wet slither. Jenna froze, her eyes wide, straining in the dim light. The boys pressed harder against her. Then, a whisper reached her, a soft, seductive voice, like the gentle lilt of a lullaby, threading through the darkness, pulling at the edges of her sanity. "Stay. Just a little longer. Join us." The voice twisted around her, wrapping itself around her heart. It felt both inviting and terrifying, like a warm comforter pulled too tightly over her body, smothering her. "Don't listen," she shouted, but the voice continued, weaving its chill into her thoughts, weaving deceit into her heart. It was a beckoning, a promise of safety, of belonging, but she could feel its sharp fangs buried deep within. She turned sharply, her grip tightening around the boys. A slick, glistening form moved in the darkness, a shape that undulated and curled like a serpent. Panic surged through Jenna as she caught sight of its beady eyes, glimmering with malevolence. "Keep your eyes on me," Jenna urged, her own voice trembling. They stumbled back, wanting to retreat into the safety of the shadows behind them. "Mommy, it's coming," Jared squeaked, lunging closer to her. Ethan's tiny hand slipped into hers, warmth battling the rising cold of terror. "I said no," she screamed, forcing her legs to move. In a hasty retreat, she turned and began to run, dragging her boys with her. The longer they stayed in that tunnel, the more it seemed to twist and change, its layout uneven, reshaping with every step they took. The whispers grew louder, merging into a guttural chorus that echoed through the void. "Join us forever," it slammed against her ears like thunder, wrapping around her sanity, seeking to pry her apart. Jenna's thoughts spiraled. They had to find a way out. Then she saw it, a dim light, glimmering ahead. Hope sprang in her chest. "There, we can get out." But the moment they dashed toward it, the floor beneath them shuddered violently. They stumbled, nearly falling as a wave of darkness rose to meet them, coiling around their ankles like grasping hands. Jenna's heart pounded fiercely. She could feel the creature behind them closing in, its presence heavy and palpable. "Don't let go," she cried, gripping the boys tighter as they fought against the darkness. A flash of light, was it an opening ahead? Or just another trick of the haunted tunnel? The laughter from the dolls echoed back, now a reckoning cry, rebounding against the walls. "You can't run. You can't hide." Jenna pushed onward, struggling to break free as fear clawed at her heels. "Mommy, I can't." Ethan's voice wavered and his strength faltered. "Keep moving," Jenna yelled, desperation spilling over. But time felt heavy, like an anchor dragging them down, and she realized that even the glow ahead might be a false promise. As she neared the light, doubt crept in. What if this was just another trap? What if the laughter was a warning, or worse, an invitation? They were almost there, but just as they reached the light, it snuffed out like a candle, revealing an expanse of daunting shadow. Jenna stumbled, heart racing, gripping her boys closely. In that suffocating void of darkness, her instincts screamed at her to run, yet she couldn't see where to go. "Mommy, I'm scared," Jared sobbed, the terror in his eyes mirroring her own. And then came the voice again, lingering like a thick fog, pulling them toward the oncoming doom. "You were meant to stay." What had they unleashed by crossing into this dark realm? The shadows churned around them, growing thick and heavy. Was escape possible? Or were they destined to join the echoes, forever trapped within the whispers? In that moment, as despair washed over her, Jenna realized what waited at the end of the light might be worse than what they had already faced. Would they be able to resist the call when the darkness beckoned? Jenna's breath hitched in her throat as a cold realization washed over her. The darkness closed in tighter, suffocating and choking. She tried to force her thoughts clear, but panic clawed at her sanity. Unable to see anything, she heard only whispers that snared at her mind, twisting her fears until they became flesh. "Mommy, what do we do?" Ethan whimpered, his small hands shaking in hers. "Stay close," she managed through gritted teeth. Light. There had been light, but now there was nothing but an abyss that threatened to swallow them whole. She could feel the shapes around her, moving, breathing. A thick mist rolled through the air, smelling of decay and something far worse. Moving carefully, she took a cautious step forward, then another, dragging the boys along. Ethan stumbled, falling behind, and for a heart-stopping moment, silence enveloped them, oppressive and heavy. "Ethan," she hissed, trying to keep her voice steady, but the tension in her chest throbbed painfully. "Get up." Jared's terrified gasp echoed her fear, and a sense of urgency surged through her. She couldn't lose him, not here. They couldn't allow whatever lurked in the shadows to claim them. Suddenly, a piercing scream sliced through the thick air, and Jenna jerked back instinctively, pulling the boys tight against her. "Mommy, what was that?" Jared cried, his voice rising shrilly. Jenna tightened her grip on her lantern, lifting it high again even as the flickering glow began to fade to a ghostly flicker, barely illuminating the cave walls. An idea sparked in her mind. Could she reach that glimmer of light she thought she had seen? Stay close. If we keep moving, we might find a way out. Desperate, she began forward again, her legs trembling. The shadows shifted as if aware of their movements, the whispers growing into a cacophony that rattled her bones. Join us, stay forever, no, she barked, forcing her feet to carry her, dragging the boys behind in a frantic sprint. Through the darkness, forms began to slither closer, grotesque features twisting and shifting just beyond the edges of her dwindling light. They were watching. Each glacial movement sent shivers racing down her spine. Those eyes glowing like dying embers sunk deep into her soul. Something lashed out, claws whispering against the edges of her sanity. A shriek persisted, louder now, shuddering through the tunnel. Stay. Jenna tore at the darkness, pushing forward with all her might, unyielding against the dread clawing at her heels. Hold on. Don't let go. But as she darted around what felt like a corner, another glow appeared, a softer light, beckoning her with an eerie calm. As they approached, Jenna noticed figures melting into the edges of the illumination, their laughter sickly sweet yet filled with malice, a fraying melody seeking to tangle in her mind. Jenna, the voice twisted, once again like a caress. You don't want to leave, we need you somewhere in that horrid pull. She choked out a denial. No, we will not stay. The air thickened as if the darkness itself regarded her outburst with disdain. Pulled tighter, threatening to swallow her whole. With a sudden determination fueled by fear, she pushed the boys onward, stepping toward the alien light that lingered just beyond the shadows. And then she heard it. A sudden crack, like bones breaking, followed by a monstrous, gurgling hiss that sent chills racing through her body. She spun around, the lantern illuminating grotesque figures mid-transformation, long limbs, contorted, featuring broken smiles that promised joy and despair in equal measures. Get away from them. There was defiance in her voice, but her heart sank, a lead weight dragging them down as the figures advanced. Jenna's instincts roared in her ears. She had to find a way out, a door through the writhing nightmare. Run, run, she shouted, and they bolted toward the taunting glow. But just as they reached it, the light flickered violently as if wavering in a fight, revealing an enormous, wide mouth that stretched open within the luminous aura, filled with gnashing teeth and glowing despair. Join us, it sang, a mockery of unity laced with terror. The boys hesitated, their hands loosening from hers, eyes wide with fear. Mommy, I want to go home, Ethan cried, but the words seemed to dissolve, swallowed by the encroaching shadows. Her heart raced at the precipice of the unknown. Could they trust the light? What awaited them within its embrace? Stay together, she roared in desperation as they teetered on the edge, the resonance of the dark whispering promises too tempting to disregard. With the suffocating darkness crawling nearer, she felt the tug of despair threatening to tear them apart, and the shadows began to swirl, murmuring her name in tantalizing tones. In that eternal moment, Jenna faced the choice that would define their fate. Leap into the treacherous light or succumb to the all-consuming darkness. Would they find salvation or their end? In that moment of indecision, Jenna's heart raced like a freight train, fear and desperation intertwining into a desperate resolve. She could feel the boys quivering beside her, their small hands trembling against the encroaching darkness that howled around them, each whisper promising safety while holding a dagger of malice. Trust me, she cried, tightening her grip around their hands, her gaze a beacon of fierce determination amidst the swirling shadows. Mommy, I don't want to be here, Jared sobbed, the innocence in his voice a stark contrast to the horror enveloping them. We have to believe, Jenna shouted, forcing her feet forward, ready to leap into the flickering light. The menacing voices around them screamed, "You will regret this choice." But she wouldn't let fear win. Not now, not ever. As they barreled forward, the chilled air swept around them, the flicker of hope illuminating the darkness. The laughter of the dolls grew frantic, a dissonance carrying centuries of despair, clawing at her mind. Yet Jenna pushed on, trusting that their bond could shield them from whatever horrors lurked just beyond. With one final, resolute leap, They hurled themselves into the flickering light, heart and soul entwined. A blinding flash engulfed them, and for a terrifying instant, it felt as if they were being torn apart. The shadows reached out, grasping, clawing, but the light enveloped them like a warm embrace, wrapping around their souls, igniting something deep within suddenly. The cacophony of twisted laughter ceased, replaced by silence, an eerie calm settling in as if the very air itself paused to breathe. The world around them shifted, colors brightening the darkness, dissipating like fog under morning light. They stumbled into an open field, drenched in moonlight, the oppressive weight of the forest gone as if it had never existed. Are we free?" Ethan whispered, blinking in disbelief. They were back in a place that felt familiar, safe. Jenna knelt down, pulling her children into a tight embrace, her heart still racing as relief washed over her. "We did it," she whispered, the words escaping like air from a balloon. "We're safe." But doubt lingered, dark tendrils creeping at the edges of her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that evil thrived just outside their safe haven, that their escape might be temporary. "We have to go home," she said, her voice trembling slightly, yet firm with newfound strength. "We can't let those things follow us." As they began their walk back towards Eastbrook, the quiet of the night wrapped around them like a soft blanket. In the depth of Jenna's heart, a realization settled. They had battled darkness and emerged victorious, but the scars of that encounter would remain. When they reached their house, it stood quiet, appearing almost normal against the backdrop of the night sky. The silhouettes of the dolls once hanging in Mr. Hargrove's garden loomed vaguely in her mind, but now, they felt defeated, mere shadows of fear rather than the oppressive forces they had seemed. Just as they stepped onto their porch, Jenna noticed something: the faint glow of porcelain eyes in the nearby forest. Instinctively, her heart raced, but she steadied herself, breathing in deeply. "No more," she whispered fiercely to the encroaching shadows, trusting in their strength. "You won't take my family." Mark stepped closer, wrapping an arm protectively around her shoulders. "We faced it, Jen. Together," he said softly, pride swelling in his voice. "Together." Their eyes met, and for a moment the world felt right again. They were battered, but healing could begin. Jenna held onto that feeling, pushing the shadows back into the recesses of her mind. The crooked eaves of the Victorian house no longer felt sinister. Instead, they felt like a shield, a monument to resilience. They stepped inside, locking the door behind them, a sacred threshold against the terrors of the night. As the family settled into their routines, Jenna kept one thing in mind. Darkness would always lurk beyond the safety of their walls, but together, they could face anything. One night set against a backdrop of unimaginable horror had forged them into an unbreakable unit. And in that simple truth lay a strength no malevolence could steal. The story of Eastbrook would live on, wrapped in legends and hidden horrors, but no whisper of fear would ever break their bond again. And as night fell, Jenna smiled, knowing they had the power to weave their own legends of light, hope, and boundless love. However, as she glanced out the window, her breath hitched at the sight: a solitary doll, standing amongst the trees, staring back with those haunting, unblinking eyes. A reminder that the rules of Eastbrook were steeped in shadows, but the Croft family had written their own chapter amidst the terror. Together, they were ready to face whatever came next. You need to subscribe now to stay updated on our exclusive stories that dive deeper into the unknown. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the tales alive. And don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Share your thoughts. We want to hear from you. But most importantly, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us build this community of true fans who understand the importance of these connections.